Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell with me, your host, Mark Duquesneau. You know, sometimes comedians are considered the new philosophers, and often when I'm talking with them, I consider comedy is like a bird. It is fragile, it is uplifting, and if you want to fly with it, you need to be prepared to get shat on. I love talking to people in comedy about comedy, and if you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is relatively new to performing comedy, but has an unmatched drive and determination. With some dilly-dally, she is purposeful. With a shilly-shally, she is resolute. It's stand-up comedian Lisa May.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. All happy?
Yes.
Okay, let's go for it.
Let's do it.
What was it that made you decide to come from Norway to the UK to start with?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I had never actually been to the UK when I came here. And I started university at the age of 19 and did 6 months. In Norway, everyone has to do this thing called X-Phil, which is psychology, philosophy, and logic before you start like a specific subject.
Right.
And I did that, and I was never very good at the studying anything. Like keeping my attention long enough was hard. And I thought I'll just take a gap year. And in Norway, all the men at that point had to go in the military at 18.
Right.
And when they go into military, they get extra points to then contribute to get into the kind of degree they want. So we have a point system all over Scandinavia. And women can go in the military as well, but if they work in healthcare or with children, they also get points. So that's why you have so many Scandinavians as au pairs in the UK.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'll do that. I'll just take a year off and go to the UK and be an au pair. And that was a gap year. That's now 25 years. A 25-year gap year, basically.
Yeah.
Is what I'm on.
So what was the impetus to remain then?
Well, to be very honest with you, like my upbringing, I know that most people think that Norway is a country where everyone is very happy and everyone's very rich. But that was not my background. My mom was alcoholic, and I had a lot of responsibility from a very early age. So from the age of 9, I pretty much took care of my 2 brothers.
Right.
So when I came to the UK, that was the first time I was able to concentrate on myself, or even think, who am I? What do I want?
Yeah.
And so for me, the decision to stay was also more a necessity in being able to create my own life, because I was basically responsible for everyone in Norway. So I thought I'll stay for a little bit longer. And here we go. Yeah.
But in that time, you built up a successful company before you suddenly then decided to become a comedian. I mean, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, the way I got into comedy is quite interesting, because when I came to the UK, what I really wanted to do was to be an actress. And I did drama school, musical and stuff in college in Norway. Yeah. But I couldn't afford to go to drama school here, because it was non-EU, being Norwegian, and it was 3 times the cost. So I tried to do a few auditions and stuff when I got here, but I never really took off. Obviously, I wasn't really trained at all. Right. And so I then went into business just by chance. Like I worked at an advertising agency for a couple of years in my mid-20s, and then I got pregnant at the age of 25. And after I had my daughter, I came back to the agency, the advertising agency, and they couldn't give me my job back, but they said, well, we got this thing called SEO that we want to like try out. You could do that part-time. And that's how I ended up doing SEO. I was like, well, yeah, I have no idea what that is. I had to actually Google search engine optimization, which is very ironic, because that's exactly what it is. And And I mean, I just got that bit. Like I was, the technical and creative elements merging like that was perfect for my brain. And I got very good at it very quickly, and then decided to start my own agency.
Yeah.
And then when I get really focused, I really focus. And I was like, I'm going to make the best agency out there. And that was really my big mission. And having come from like that, both my parents were bankrupt. As I said, my mom was alcoholic, and I had never really had any money.
Right.
Like we had quite often like times where we hadn't paid the electricity, or we had to move because she hadn't paid the rent and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I really wanted a different life for my kids. So when I started the agency, it wasn't a kind of like, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to be a CEO. It was more like, I will make a life that's better for my kids.
Yeah.
And that kind of motivation really focuses your mind to achieve. And so, yeah, I built the agency from scratch. And it was just me. I had no experience in business, but I have always been very, maybe because I've been so responsible most of my life, I've always been very good in believing in myself. I don't really need anyone else to believe in me. Like if I think I can do it, I just do it.
Yeah.
And that turns out to be the perfect thing in business. And so I built the agency, sold the agency.
Yes.
And then had a complete and utter like breakdown, like burnout on a massive scale. And then COVID happened. Yes. And I had like a huge earnout with this big agency, which means that you have to work out a certain time to get the money that you want for the buyout.
Yeah.
And COVID was my last year, so I lost a lot of money in that year.
Right.
And so after kind of completely having a meltdown and not being able to get out of bed, I thought, fuck this shit, let's tell some jokes. I say that kind of flippantly, but it turns out after being so serious for so many years, I had a real kind of urge to have fun and to be silly and to express myself in a very different way than I had for like 15 years.
Yeah. Why was comedy why not writing or something like that? What was the inspiration that made you think I can go out on the stage and do stand-up?
Yeah, that is really interesting. My dad asked the same question when like just before Christmas, he came over and one of my brothers now live in the UK, and we were having lunch, and my dad was like, why are you doing stand-up? And my younger brother went, Dad, she's always done stand-up. And he was like, what do you mean? It's like, do you not remember all those family parties when she made everyone sit down and she would do a comedy sketch that she'd seen on TV, or go and get dressed up and clown around? She was always doing stand-up. And that is true. Like I've always enjoyed making people laugh. Like even as a CEO, I was always pranking people. I was always trying to make light of things to get the deal over the line.
Yeah.
So when it was very serendipitous though how it happened.
Right.
Because I'd been talking about wanting to do stand-up for years. Because I love watching stand-up and I love laughing and like that's definitely have been a big part of my life, like just being able to laugh, especially when things are really serious. And my best friend was just like, why don't you do this? Like when I'd sold them and I'd had that just come up from air, from that big earnout and that burnout, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And then a couple of hours after I'd seen her, she sent me a message going like, there's a stand-up course in Kingston.
Yeah.
If you don't sign up to this, I'm going to punch you in the boob, which is fair. And so I did.
Yeah. So what was the course? Who was running that?
It was crack comedy by Eric McElroy in Kingston.
And how did that, was it everything that you expected it would be?
Yeah.
What were you expecting?
I don't know what I was expecting. And also, like I've got to tell you, so during those 15 years as a CEO, I was speaking at conferences all over the world. Like that was kind of partly how I made my agency and how I made it in the industries. I was good on a stage.
Right.
And I was really good at kind of talking to people. And maybe because I'm dyslexic. And so I can't really read out loud. So speaking, I was always really good at connecting with people, because like if I tried to read what I'd written on the slides, then everything would turn to shit. So and I thought, for some reason I thought, doing a comedy course, it will be a bit like that, being on stage. It is nothing like that. That was so funny, like how I thought that would be similar, and it really is nothing like it.
Yeah.
Apart from being on a stage, that's the only similarity. But it's a very different skill set.
So did they, at the end of the course, you did a showcase, I assume?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And like the course was great. It was over 6 weeks, and like every Monday, and we had, I met loads of people. Like the interesting thing with comedy, I find, is it just attracts people from like completely different backgrounds and upbringings and country, like everything. So I think we were like 12 people at the start of the course. I think it was 9 that finished.
Right.
But they were like, the youngest were like 18 and the oldest were like in his late 60s.
Yeah.
And it really was such a great representation of a big, like, different types of people. And yeah, the course was great. It was like, it's very basic to start with, though, just getting used to being on stage but I immediately loved writing the jokes. And if anything, like my teacher was like, you have to cut it down, because I had like, I think like at least 30 jokes for the 5-minute set, which that would have been like 25 minutes.
So how was the showcase?
Oh yeah, it was really amazing. I still think that's one of my best performances, obviously, because there's loads of friends and family and everyone that's there is supporting someone else, and that kind of supportive audience I haven't really been able to replicate yet. But it was really amazing. I was so nervous though, my hands were just like shaking. And I thought like you could hear in my voice, but apparently you couldn't. I think just people are saying that.
So having done the showcase, what about your first gig for real, if you like, with people who weren't so supportive? What was that first gig outside of a workshop?
Yeah. Oh, that was pretty bad. So the first gig I did outside of a showcase was an open mic night.
Right.
But it was open mic night with the musicians as well.
Okay.
And that is just awful. So I don't know what I thought, but yeah, that was the first and the only time I've done an open mic where you have mixed types of acts.
Yeah.
Because it was mostly musicians, and this place was known for being an open mic for musicians.
Yeah.
But they also let comedians come on. So we were like 3 comedians scattered around with an audience entirely wanting to listen to music.
Is that in Kingston?
And that was,
Was that the Grey Horse?
Yes.
I didn't know their open mic nights did comedy as well. And even I've done an open mic there, like, 30 years ago.
Oh my God, no way.
It's always been music.
Exactly.
It's always been music.
Yep.
I didn't even know they did comedy there.
Yeah. They do. I think it's more they do allow it.
Yeah. But I think if people are going to go and see comedy, they have to know they're going to be seeing comedy.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that is not there. So, well, I got the kind of bombing out the way really, really early.
I think the comedian has to die on stage quite early to kind of, the reality check, if you like.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that was quite right. I got through it though. Like I got through all the jokes and stuff, but I don't think anyone laughed. But I suppose, but it did actually teach me something, because I was like, if no one laughs, you can panic or you can continue. And I was like, I'm just going to get through this.
Yeah.
And so it was fine.
Good. Did you were talking there a minute ago about always getting family to sit down and pay attention while you did your stand-up. Did you have comedy in Norway growing up then? Was that a big thing in?
Yeah. So there was this female comedian in Norway when I grew up called Hege Skøyen.
Mm-hmm.
She's still a comedian. She's amazing. She did stand-up and a lot of comedy sketches.
Yeah.
And I still have a bit of a soft spot for like comedy sketches, slightly slapstick and stupid.
Yeah.
And I used to watch everything she came out with, and she was on TV a lot, and her and this other lady that I can't remember the name of, they used to do a lot of things, like a little bit like the AbFab team.
Right.
Like they're like the Norwegian AbFab, these two women. So I watched a lot of that growing up, but also I watched a lot of like British comedy, like Fawlty Towers, Life of Brian, like all this like very British humor stuff that I loved.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of the first kind of inspirations was that Norwegian comic, and then the very British comedy series.
Yeah. So having seen these types of comedy, appreciating that they may have inspired you in some way to take a comedy as a course, did they inspire the kind of comedy that you wanted to do as well?
Oh, this is a really good question. No, not yet. But I do feel like my comedy is changing now. Like as you start as a comedian, you kind of very often, I feel like, certainly for me, this is the case. I started off doing jokes that I knew what I thought people would think is funny,
right?
Rather than telling like my stories or my kind of comedy. Like it takes you a while to find your voice, I think.
Yes.
So I did I started off telling jokes about the things that everyone will relate to.
Yeah.
Which I think makes sense. But also I don't feel like it's quite representing who I am yet, or the kind of comedy I want to do.
Yeah. So are you mindful of your persona when you're on stage? I mean, how are you acting? Is this a character that you play?
Yeah, no. This is a scary thing. No, I'm not. I'm not. I think I'm quite similar off stage and on stage. If anything, if I could bring a little bit more of my actual character to stage, that would be better. But it's I think as a female comedian and as a new comedian, I know there's a lot of things that the audience has to get over before they warm up to you.
Okay.
And I feel very aware of that. And so haven't quite found my way to be myself completely, and for the audience to warm up quick enough to who I really am. That sounds complicated, but I just think that there is so I'm also really interested in psychology and neuroscience, and as I was started up comedy, I was supposed to start a master's in applied neuroscience, and then took a weird segue into comedy. But I do think there's a lot of interesting kind of overlaps on there, like understanding people and understanding humor is a very kind of unique. You can understand a lot about people by understanding what makes them laugh, what makes them kind of engage and connect with you.
Yeah.
And I am very aware that you have to really, like, it's a very much an art doing stand-up comedy, like getting people on board quickly and warm up to like you, but also not like you so much that if you say something that's like slightly edgy or anything, that they will dislike you again. It's like a real kind of journey of taking someone on the journey of your story, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like to get to, where I can like tell some of my actual stories.
Yeah.
And people get to know me, but also find it funny.
Being on stage, comedians talk about it being like a form of therapy. Does it being in the spotlight make it easier to talk about those personal stories and to talk about yourself?
No, no, I don't think it does. It's I do feel like it's actually quite difficult to get people warming up to you. Like I think, or maybe this is just me, but I feel like who I really am and what I look like and who I look like I am are very different people.
Right.
And there are some great things I can play with this. Like that in itself can be comical.
Right.
But you have to kind of, I've always felt like I have in comedy, but also in normal life, I feel like I have to like ease people in to who I am so I don't scare the shit out of them.
What about, I mean, you're obviously a very strong and driven person. So what about how competitive are you? Have you been entering competitions? Are you trying to find your place among your peers in that respect?
Yeah. Yes, I have. I entered the So You Think You're Funny competition, and I didn't get through.
Yeah.
And I found it really, really hard not to get through. And obviously you see everyone that goes through and you start comparing yourself. And at first, like, I really took it quite hard.
Yeah.
And I was really upset because I am very competitive. But also, weirdly, I think the things that drive me more, like, you know, the reason I did so well in my career, like I never really had anyone praising me saying, well done, keep going. Or like, I've always done this from within myself.
Right.
So sometimes someone saying, no, actually, we don't think you're quite good enough, actually spurs me on, rather than for a couple of days, I was really like upset and bad that I didn't make it through. But also I was like, well,
yeah,
they're not right. Like, you know, it's very subjective. And it is also very much about the night. I know that they say it's all about how you write and stuff, but you know, I know that I am getting better, and I'm improving. And although it would have been really lovely to have that on you know, on your comedy CV that you made it through to this semi-final, it doesn't really matter. Like what matters is if I think that I am getting better and that I can find my voice. And I think this is what not getting through has made me think about more. Like, what are the jokes that I want to tell? Why do I want to tell them?
Yeah.
And why am I really doing this? And it certainly isn't for a competition or for someone else.
Yeah.
You know, this is really, comedy for me is the first time that I'm doing something that's just for me.
Yeah.
I have 2 kids. I've done the business thing. I've been married and fucking divorced.
And we all.
So yeah. and had to pay for it. This is really the first time that I'm doing something completely just for me.
Yeah.
So even if I don't make it through a competition, I am still doing it for me. So now I'm really aware, like, well, if you're doing it for yourself and you really want to find your voice, and that this somehow will also help me with my own self-development, then the competitions doesn't really matter that much. It's sad, but oh well. You know what they say? What doesn't kill you makes you funnier. I don't know if anyone says that, but they should say that.
They do now.
Oh, yeah, they do now.
Well, what about setting up your own comedy night?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about that.
Yes, this is a classic Lisa move, I think. So when I started going on the circuit, doing the open mic night, so obviously I have 2 kids. One is already at uni, but it's a lot of stuff to juggle. And for some bizarro reason, most like open mic nights or like first year comedy nights, they're all in bloody North London and East London.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of late nights. I could only really gig on 2 nights a week, Mondays and Tuesdays. And so like I just didn't have any life whatsoever because I was always on the bloody trains. And another thing, like what I realized really early on was that the kind of first year of comedy and how the comedy world works is like there seems to be some like like rite of passage that everyone talks about. Like you have to do the open mic night and you have to do these god awful bringer gigs. Which the bringer gigs being you have to bring an audience member with you. So not only do you have to traipse to Dalston, but you also have to find a random friend that isn't really bloody tired of your jokes to come with you to said place and to buy some drinks so that the pub will be happy.
Yeah.
And oh God, there's some awful gigs out there. And for a few weeks in November, when I've been going for like 6 months or something, I was considering quitting because I was like, what is the point doing all this work to tell jokes to 10 other comedians that are not wanting to laugh and then go home? Like, what is this point? And so then I was like, well, why is there no people at these gigs? Like, why do we have to bring people? And so I asked those people about this, and they were like, well, the promoters are often comedians, and they don't really know how to promote it. I'm like, and I guess like a lot of comedians that start their own night, they're doing it because they want stage time, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are some value in these gigs for testing out jokes and stuff. Yeah. But as a new comedian, you don't really, like in the first 3 months, I still hadn't done any gigs that were to an actual proper audience since my first gig ever. And I was like, what the hell? Like this seems mental. Like, oh, everyone has to do this. That's why I kept on being told, like everyone has to do, you have to do at least 1 year on the open mic circuit for no money to only comedians. And I was like, I don't think I do.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'm pretty sure I can get more people in a pub myself.
Yeah.
The agency that I ran was the SEO agency and digital PR. So it's not difficult for me to make a website and do all of that. So after a particularly bad gig, again, an open mic night in Teddington, where I had to tell my jokes in front of an 8-year-old child because it was just an open room in a pub. Yeah. I was like, that's it. I'm doing this. So a few hours after I got back, I had already built the website and registered all the Instagram, all the stuff that I needed.
Yeah.
Didn't have a pub yet. And then went to, because my agency used to be in Surbiton where I live. And so I knew a lot of the local businesses in this area.
Yeah.
So I just went into all the pubs and asked them if they ever thought about doing comedy. Had one pub really interested, but it was like an open pub and they wouldn't close it off or anything. And like that didn't seem ideal. Then I walk into the Surbiton Flyer and Richard, who owns that place, happened to be there on that day.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of known of him from having my office in Surbiton. And I was like, I want to start a comedy night. I know you guys are closed on a Sunday, but how about you let me have the pubs on Sundays? I get loads of people here and comedians, and we do this. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to find some comedians now. So I was like, okay, so I then started booking comedians that I had seen already on the open mic circuit. Yeah. But I knew that I also wanted this to be different. I kind of wanted it to be a mix of all of this, like a bridging one, where you have the audience that you get pro gigs, but new comics are also on the bill. So I wanted one big headline. I wish I knew I had to pay for. And I wanted them to be like really big headliners that would also pull a crowd. And then the first few months, I had mostly just the big headliner and all new comedians.
Yeah.
And the first one, we had a packed house, 60 tickets. There was 60 registered tickets, and I didn't even know how to fit everyone in the pub because that was really full. And that was in the end of November, and I had Mark Simmons as the headliner, and he was amazing.
Yeah.
He was so good. And then he went from there, and now it's more like it's still a very much a mix, but now I have some like semi-pros, maybe a few 10-minute acts that are more experienced.
Yeah.
But it was still the main purpose of this is to have a place for new comedians to get an actual audience.
Yeah.
But also saying that I don't want it to be a place where any old comedian can come on. I really wanted to make sure the quality is high, so I still painstakingly choose every single comedian on the bill.
Yeah.
And really think about all the parts that I think is important, like diversity, like the amount of times I've been the only woman on the bill.
Yeah.
Even on the open mic circuit, I'm like, seriously. So I try really hard to have at least 50-50. And also from all other backgrounds.
Yeah.
And have actual diversity is really important in comedy.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, because I care so much about doing having an actual crowd for new comedians as well, is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a digital marketing course, digital marketing, digital PR course for promoters and for acts that are doing Edinburgh stuff. But mostly I want to do it for promoters that have their own night. And it's not going to be super expensive. But what I also want to offer is any promoters that want to do this course for free, I will give it to them for free if they promise to have 1 month or 4 gigs without being a bringer.
Yeah.
Because that would be amazing. So that people can actually do these gigs, get an audience, and cut out the bringer kind of policy thing, because I just don't think it's not good for anyone. But bringers usually don't want to be there. And it's really stressful as a comedian trying to find people. And also it's not a representative audience, because the bringers often are other comedians or they're friends of the comedians. So they're laughing and what you get back is different. So if anyone wants to do that, they can DM me. I'm going to set up a page for the course in the next week or so, and then get sign up. So I'll do it all online, so it's not going to be difficult. It'll be like 2-3 hours course, and I'll teach people how to set up Google Maps, which is the biggest thing, like Google Maps, Google Business, so that you can be found in the search engines, because stand-up comedy is very much a local intent thing. So in search engine is stand-up comedy in location. That's what you do with Google Business. It's not that fucking difficult. I can teach you really easily. And Instagram and Facebook search, like paid social. Yeah. Those are the things that really work. But also I can teach them like what to do on their website to really be found for their names and stuff. And things like why they should not be using link trees. I will tell them exactly why, but that is one of the most frustrating thing as a techie, seeing all these people use link trees, basically giving away their property, because your website and your content is your property, and link trees makes it impossible for anyone to find anything unless they go through everything manually.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So your night stand-up lols in Surbiton, you MC the gigs yourself?
Yeah. with mixed results, I think. But yeah, I thought, I know loads of people recommended to me that you should hire in an MC, but I'm very particular with how I want the audience to feel and how I want the comedians to feel. And I tried once and I didn't really like it. Someone else representing my night. Yeah. Maybe I'm a control freak. Yes.
Well, is it just because it's your baby and therefore it's your audience, so you're protective of them?
Yeah. And also I really want, I know a lot of MCs that are like circuit MCs, they do this thing where they, anytime there's some new comics on the bill, they make a big deal out of saying that, some of these people have never really done a gig before. They're like newer comics, they're more expensive. Why take away their power?
Yeah.
Don't take away the power. Like the audience will laugh or they won't laugh. You don't need to tell them anything. That's the comedian's job.
Yeah. So how do you find being an MC as opposed to an act?
Yeah, I'm liking it more and more. When I remember the names of acts.
Yeah.
I would say that was my most embarrassing moment ever. I just like, it's so weird. My brain is like, you tell me a story, I will remember that story forever. But you tell me a name, and unless you repeat it 50 times, I won't remember the name. Like I really struggle. So that's not really an ideal thing for an MC. But I am liking it more and more, and I'm getting more and more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And I do quite like the kind of, reading the room and knowing when to up the energy, or, I think that's really the MC's job, to make sure the whole night goes well. And if someone's gone on that's been a bit low energy, bringing it up for the next act, if I know the next act has more energy, so people don't get shell-shocked. Or how to bring the energy down after a musical act, for example. Yeah. Because no one wants to go after a musical act. They're like, God, my joke's going to sound really boring now.
What about the improvisational side of it? Do you have sort of set go-to jokes to pull out, or is it all off the cuff, or is it hard to improvise on that basis?
I know for sure I am not really good at this yet.
Yeah.
But that's actually one of the things I am wanting to do next, is to do an improv course, because I think that's really the only thing that's going to loosen you up to be able to do proper audience kind of engagement and stuff. And I don't really do much of that at the moment. But I do have so many acts on as well that there's not so much I can do. But yeah, I would love to get better at that. And I do have a few things. Like I have a few jokes. Like my old comedy teacher, Eric, has been amazing at supporting me even after the course. And he always says, like, ask the questions that you have a joke for. Yeah. So, asking someone a leading question, that's like a trick that every MC or every comedian really uses. And that, like, just reminding myself of that has really helped, because that's when you can, you can just trick them into leading up to your joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what so far then have been your best and worst gigs?
Weirdly, the best gig was my So You Think You're Funny heat. So although they didn't like it, I thought it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And it was because, again, that was definitely the biggest audience. There were like 100 people, I think, at the Crack Comedy Brixton venue. And everyone was really there up for comedy. So, that for me is the ideal, when there's a lot of people and you can feel the energy, because as a comedian, you can really then, it makes such a difference. That's why we do it. We do it for the lulz. We want the lulz. Give me the laughs, the belly laugh, ideally. So that I really enjoyed that. And weirdly, that was like super high pressure because it was a competition. But it turns out if it's really high pressure, I do better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably my best one so far. And worst ones. Where do I start? Oh God. Yeah, there've been a few. Oh my God. I honestly don't know where to start. There's been quite a few that have been quite bad. There was one that I really didn't like, because it was like one of those, it wasn't a bringer event, but there was only comedians, and it was in a really dark basement, and the MC was just rude and a bit aggressive and made everyone feel really rubbish. Right. And like, it just felt like being in a prison telling jokes. It was just, the whole atmosphere was just awful. And he made everyone feel really bad. The weird thing is, like, I've done gigs where I've done worse than that. Like, my performance wasn't that bad, but the whole energy thing.
Yes.
You know, I don't understand why an MC would want their acts to feel bad about themselves. Like,
Yeah.
what do you get from that?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? Like, why do a comedy night or have a comedy night if you don't like people?
Yeah.
If you don't want people to do well, are you doing it just so that you do well and you can put everyone else down? It's just, it was just horrific. And I think there's quite a few like that.
Right.
And I just did this one once and I would never go back. And there's a few that I've done once and I'm like, my list of gigs I will never do again is quite big. And that's what these people don't understand. They think, you know, because we're new comedians that they can just treat us like whatever, and they really can't. And I'm hoping that those gigs will get less and less, that people will start speaking out about it, because it's not okay. There's no need to act like that or to put people down. And that's basically the opposite of what I want to do. I want everyone that performs to my night feel like they've done the most amazing job and feel great about themselves, and feel supported and feel inspired to continue. Like, why put someone down when you can bring them up?
Yeah.
There's a little bit too much of that in comedy. I'm surprised of how many people that are, you know, the kind of people that will push people down rather than lifting them up.
Did that help to inspire you to do your own night? Is that another influencing factor? Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you know, that's actually how I started my own agency, is working for an agency where they treated me very badly. Like, they were really quite awful. And I was like, well, actually, this is not how you treat people. So the way that I built my agency and how my agency was run was quite different to a lot of agencies.
Yeah.
And it was based on all the things that I knew I didn't want to do to people ever. Right. So yeah, again, like, I had a mentor for 3 years when I sold my agency, the advertising agency that bought my agency, paid for a mentor for me. And I had done 15 years in business without a mentor.
Yeah.
But they were paying for it. So I was like, yeah, okay. And they let me choose one. And I had this most amazing mentor called Margaret Heffernan. I think she's done like 5 TED Talks. Right. And she's a really prolific businesswoman, very intelligent. I remember first meeting with her, she said, how do people describe you, Lisa? And I was like, well, people always say I'm passionate. And she was like, you're not passionate. You're pissed off, and pissed off gets shit done. And it's her truth. If something really gets to me, if I think things are unfair or not right, that's what will drive me the most to make a change. Yeah. And that's really what I want to do with stand-up laws. Yeah. That there is no need to treat new comedians like shit. I want everyone to be treated well, and I want everyone to be represented. And I want to show that we can be nice to each other, and lift each other up instead of dragging people down. That's enough of that, I think. Yeah.
Let's just rewind a little bit back to, we were talking about the comedy that you saw in Norway and British comedies that you would watch. How does comedy differ culturally between Norway and the UK?
Yeah, I think Scandinavian culture is quite similar to British in a lot of ways.
Right.
In this, like, I think there's more British comedy in Scandinavia than American comedy.
Right. Okay.
As in, like, series and stuff. Although, because I know a lot of other European countries is more Americanized or more into American humor. Because I think that's for Europeans, I think we think of British humor and American humor as a very two distinctive different things. Yeah. But especially from movies and series and sitcoms and stuff, I guess. But I think Norwegian humor is more similar to the British anyway.
Right.
But saying that, there are some really big differences culturally that has taken me many years to get to is that in the UK, if you know someone well, you will take the piss out of them.
Yes.
Like significantly, like really, like even kind of meanly.
Yeah.
And if you don't know them, you'd be super nice to those people.
Yeah.
In Norway, it's the exact opposite. We would be super rude to people we don't know, like rude, quite rude. And then, but we would never really cross the line. Like you don't have the same take the piss culture. Maybe more so now, but when I grew up, that was the biggest difference I found when I moved to the UK, is that like just how that banter and that taking the piss was such a big part of the everyday humor. Now I feel like I've completed expert level of taking the piss. But it took me a while, and not to be offended and stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the stuff that I watched and stuff, I also quite slapstick stuff, and there's more of that, I think, more like stupid humor in Norway. Like Viggo Venn, who just won Britain's Got Talent.
Yes.
This is great. Now I can say, fellow Norwegian comedian, we are nowhere near in the same league. But there are like 4 of us on the circuit, so that is a small enough group. But yeah, that kind of like clowning, like sketch stuff, that is really popular in Norway, and it's always been so. Do you remember that really annoying song?
Narrow it down.
What does the fox say? Do you remember that one?
No.
So basically, this is typical Norwegian humor. So
okay.
in about, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, there are 2 Norwegian comedians, TV comedians, that were offered. This is so ridiculous. This is very Norwegian humor. They were offered a load of money to do a music video, like a comedy music video. And I can't remember the exact details of who it was from, but they were just like, let's make it really ridiculous, like really stupid. And so they wrote this song about, like, no one actually knows what a fox say, like what it doesn't bark, it doesn't howl, it doesn't, and the whole song is about that. But they did on like a huge budget. So they made like a pro music video to this ridiculous song. And then the whole thing went viral, and it was like everywhere. And that kind of like silly, stupid, like, let's do something ridiculous I think that's quite Scandinavian humor as well. And maybe that's the only real difference, is that the Scandis do more ridiculous, stupid shit.
I mean, you're talking about the comparison for Norway comparing closer to the UK to the US. I mean, it's made me think of Taskmaster, because Taskmaster, the UK show Taskmaster, I don't know if you're familiar with it, basically failed in America because they just didn't get it. That kind of being silly, just being flippant and pointless. They didn't understand it. Whereas I think the Norwegian version, Kongen Befaler, is like in its 4th or 5th series.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Like it is more like, I feel like the American humor often has to be able to get to the masses in the US. It's a lot of like pointers. This bit is now going to be funny, and then they will show the funny thing almost. Like pointers. While there's a lot of subtlety to British humor that you have to really listen for. I think it's clever.
I was talking to another comic about this and saying, like, traditional American comedy or stand-up comedy seems to be very much, joke, and it's got to be fast and it's got to be loud. Whereas in the UK, you can make a whole program where you don't say anything at all and it's hilarious, and you just stand there with a bemused look on your face, and it will get howls of laughter. So that subtlety doesn't work so much. That's
so true. Yeah, I've seen some acts there's so many amazing acts on the circus that are very different. And the styles of being very different can sometimes just be hilarious in itself. Like the way they talk, or the deadpan. I could never get away with deadpan. My face is just too eager.
Because you're too excited. You get very excited. I've seen that. I've seen your act.
Yes, exactly. I get so excited.
So you talked about sketch programs and things like you'd mentioned the AbFab and you've talked about obviously that you did acting. What made you choose stand up over doing like sketch comedy, or is sketch comedy still an option?
Sketch comedy is still an option. Throughout, like, I was just telling a friend this the other day, like when this is ridiculous. Everyone's going to want to look this up now, but when I sold my agency, they did this big press release in one of these big advertising. I think it was Campaign magazine, which is like a big marketing advertising magazine. Right. And the CEO of Omnicom was interviewed about buying my company. And the journalist had just embedded the video that we had on my agency website.
Yeah.
What she hadn't done was actually look at that video. Because that video is a 3-minute video taking the piss out of advertising agencies taking videos on their homepage about absolute fuck all. And the whole thing is just like, here's a footage of some awards so that you will know we're really good. Or we are now dressed as 50s ad execs because then maybe you will take us seriously. And here's the guy to skateboard because we're kooky. The whole thing was just like a piss take. And they just embedded that video. It's still on there. The picture of the CEO of Omnicom and this piss take of advertising agencies. So I think I've always done sketches without, I've shoehorned a way of making my stupid, funny ideas in my head reality for no apparent reason. Other than it'd be really funny if anyone actually bothered to watch it.
Yeah. What are the key lessons that you've learned so far then? We've talked about your philosophy for your own comedy night, but what about the lessons that you've personally learned from your experience so far?
Yeah, I've learned so much in the last year about people, for sure, but also about, like, I've had a lot of thoughts about why I want to do this, like what makes me want to do comedy. Like, after running an agency for 15 years and selling it, there's fuck all money in comedy.
Yes.
So you have to really fucking love it to do it.
Yes.
And that's really my biggest kind of discovery is that, sometimes I feel really frustrated and angry that I didn't do well, or I feel frustrated I've spent an hour and a half to go up to a gig where there are 5 other people. Yeah. But most of the time, what it gives me is something that I didn't have before. And that is like a joy of being silly, a joy of telling jokes, a joy of seeing people smile, or even the joy of seeing someone roll their eyes. Sometimes it could be quite funny to like shock someone or like see them like have some kind of reaction. The big thing for me has been like the connections with the connections with the audiences, even if they were just other comedians or talking to people that also love comedy, and that brings a lot of joy. So sometimes the purpose can just be joy.
Perfect. Lisa, how can we find out about you and where you're playing?
Yes, where I have got a website that I never update like everyone else.
Yep.
But probably on my Instagram, stand up Lisa May, I keep up to date.
So now the final question, the one we've been building up to the whole time, is what way would you summarize comedy in a nutshell?
Comedy in a nutshell is the joy of connecting with people through laughter. Is that nutshell enough?
You can have a bigger nutshell.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think
it's up to you. If you are happy, then I'm happy. But you will feel free to expand.
Yeah, no, for me, I think that's it. I think there's something magical about laughing, and having come from a background where there were a lot of challenges, there were a lot of pain and anger and challenging times.
Yeah.
it, it is through those dark times that you learn to laugh with your belly, where you really experience joy. I think I think it might be a Japanese expression that says, blessed are the broken ones because they let the light in. And I think comedians are very much those broken ones, and they let the light in.
Beautiful. Lisa, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much.